Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to take attendance of officers attending virtually and to explain how proceedings will work. Thank you, Susan.
Good evening. Can I confirm the following officers joining us remotely can hear us and that we can hear them? Sarah Kingsley.
Good evening, present.
Good evening. Nigel Smith.
Good evening, present.
Good evening. And Rachel Rooney.
Yeah, good evening, present.
Good evening. Are there any other officers in attendance remotely tonight that I haven't called out? If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. Are there any questions? I will now hand back to the chair.
Thank you. Item 1, apologies for absence. I received apologies for absence from Councillor Daniel Allen and Councillor Amy Allen. Any further apologies? Thank you. Item 2, minutes of the meeting 19th of November 2025. I would like to propose that we take as read and approve as a true record the minutes of the meetings of Cabinet held on 19th November 2025. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Albert.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments? We go to the vote.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Item 3, notification of the business. There's been no other business notified. Item 4, Chair's announcements. 1, in accordance with Council policy, this meeting is being recorded. Recordings will be available both on the Council's YouTube channel as well as on the Council's ModGov site, alongside the documents from the meeting. 2, members are reminded that the Council has been declared both a climate emergency and ecological emergency. These are serious decisions and mean that, as this is an emergency, all of us, officers and members, have that in mind as we carry out our various roles and tasks for the benefit of our district. More details are included on the agenda front sheet. 3, members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder of this and speaking rights is set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. 4, for the purpose of clarification, 4.8.23a of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, a member may leave the room during the debate and consideration of that item and be able to vote. However, please be mindful of the business on the agenda. Wherever possible, leave at an appropriate point in the proceedings. 5, public participation. We have no public participation this evening. Item 6, items referred from other committees. 6A, Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Council Delivery Plan 2025-2026, Q2 update to be considered with item 11. 6B, overview. Oh, my words mixed up. Get my words in the right place. Overview and Scrutiny Committee, the Council Tax Reduction Scheme to be considered with item 12. 6C, Finance, Audit and Risk Committee, second quarter Capital Budget Monitoring Review 2025-2026 to be considered with item 13. 6D, Finance, Audit and Risk Committee, second quarter Revenue Budget Monitoring Review 25-26 to be considered with item 14. 6E, Finance, Audit and Risk Committee, second quarter Treasury Management Review 25-26 to be considered with item 15. 6 F, Finance, Audit and Risk Committee, Revenue and Capital Budgets for 2026-27 onwards, to consider with item 16. 6G, Finance, Audit and Risk Committee, Risk Management Governance, Mid-Year Update, to consider with item 17. Item 7, Garden Waste Charge. Councillor Amy Allen is not present, so I believe that Sarah Kinsley is going to introduce this in her place.
Chair,
Oh, sorry.
it's me.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, because I haven't got any.
Apologise.
Because I haven't got any other papers to introduce this evening, so I thought, what the heck? That's all too. So that's
okay.
So that's
It's
fine.
going to be Ian Albert.
Thank you, Chair, and obviously hope you're feeling better, Amy, and obviously thank you to Sarah and all the team for the work on the paper. Just really to briefly introduce a paper for Cabinet to ask you to approve the annual garden waste charge for the subscription period from the 1st of April 26 to 31st of March 27. Unlike household waste and recycling, there's no legal requirement to collect garden waste unless households opt in to the service and agree to pay. And as you'll see from the paper, we've got somewhat over 30,000 households currently signed up to the service. The current charge is £55 per bin for those households who choose to subscribe, with a half-price concessionary rate for households in receipt of council tax reduction. And I think that's really important. And we'll talk about council tax reduction scheme later on. But that concessionary rate, we'd obviously always highlight and make sure that try and residents to take up that where appropriate. Table 8.2 shows the current charges for all of the Hertfordshire districts, and I think you can see for those who charge for collection of garden waste, with the North Herts charge amongst the lower end and kind of competitive rate that we are charging. Most of those charges on that list are likely also to increase for 26-27. The recommendation for Cabinet is to increase the charge to £57. That's still less than our colleagues as the other part of the service over in East Herts. And so we're recommended to increase the charge to £57 to help cover the Veolia contract inflation costs and the council's own cost of administering the service as laid out in paragraph 10.1. So with that, Chair, happy to move the recommendation in the paper that we approve that garden waste charge of £57 from the year beginning on the 1st of April. I think we've got Sarah online, and obviously Ian for any particular questions colleagues might have. I'm happy to move, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? No? Right. Can I have a proposer, please? Presumably Councillor Albert. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Debenham.
Happy to second.
Debate. The debate. I believe that this works out as it's 3.6%. So it's simply inflation. Any other comments? Shall we go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. But item 8, local plan next steps. Councillor Donna Wright will present the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this report outlines the new local plan making system and what actions are required to ensure adoption of the North Herts local plan by the end of 2028. So just as background, Cabinet agreed to review the local plan in January 2024, and a timetable was agreed that would enable adoption of the plan by the end of 2027. However, progress has stalled pending new government regulations and guidelines, So the original timetable was predicated on the assumption that legislative changes would be introduced by September 25, but unfortunately the government guidance on the new system wasn't issued until November, with the legislation expected this month, and hopefully with commencement in March. So basically there's been a delay of about 6 months. The new system proposed by government is much more streamlined, with a statutory 30-month timetable for plan preparation and examination, preceded by a mandatory 4-month get ready period, as they call it. There are also a number of mandatory gateways and consultations, and a requirement for review 5 years after adoption of the plan. Examination and adoption are expected within a month of the inspector's report. So the full details of the new system are in the report that you've received. So what we are proposing is a revised timetable for the North Herts local plan based on the new requirements, which is presented in Appendix 1. The 30-month time frame would allow completion by the end of 2028, but North Herts are planning to submit earlier, prior to LGR in April 2028. MHGLG have advised proceeding with issuing formal notice as soon as the system is enacted. But as the new system is still technically out for consultation, we are asking Cabinet to approve delegated powers for the Director and the Executive Member to publish the formal notice of intention and make any alterations to the timetable in light of the final statutory framework. The revised timetable and approach for the local plan was approved by the Strategic Planning Board in December 25, which does include cross-party representation. So that there has been some quite close scrutiny. Taking forward the accelerated timetable is subject to the strategic planning team being fully staffed, which unfortunately isn't at the moment, and efforts are being made to recruit to vacant posts. There is a national shortage of planning officers, which I think colleagues will be aware of. But the local plan timetable will be kept under review in line with resource availability and updated as appropriate. And regular reports on this will go to the SPB, and so it will be tightly monitored. So I would like to ask that Cabinet approve the general direction for the local plan, and allow the delegated authority as mentioned previously. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Any questions? Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. It's reassuring to see that we're intending to submit ahead of the 30-month window, and that we're looking to ensure that there's a smooth, I guess, transition ahead of the unitary process. But what happens if we cannot meet the 30-month timetable, and how will officers ensure that there are no further delays to the programme? Councillor Wright. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, government have been clear that the timetable is mandatory, and plans that fall behind may be required to restart stages. Failure to progress may also increase the risk of speculative development if the plan becomes out of date, but officers will monitor the risks closely and escalate issues early. The Secretary of State does have the power to intervene if they feel authorities are not progressing sufficiently. In the past, this has been on the basis of formal directions to revise timetables and preventing plans from being withdrawn. It's not clear as yet what interventions they'll take for this new 30-month timetable, but I mean, essentially the officers are monitoring it closely, including resourcing, and issues will be escalated as early as possible. So I think, we're trying to prepare as much as we can, basically.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Albert.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to obviously Councillor Wright and all the team for the work on I think what's a really clear paper and so on set out. But I think my question probably is as much as anything how we're looking to keep both obviously councillors involved. I think it's been really welcome, the training programs and sessions that we've had from the planning team, and I think that's really helpful. But both obviously how we kind of keep up the communication of where we are, and then also probably obviously I guess the wider public in relation to where we are on because this is a really important piece of work, and it'd be just good to understand what's the thoughts around our sort of communication strategy, both internally and externally on it. But thanks for the paper. I think it's very clear.
Yep, thank you. So in terms of member consultation, we are planning a series of workshops. So there should be a couple in the diary already. I think there's one for February and May. I mean, in terms of resident consultation, I mean, there are going to be consultations as part of the process. I might actually hand over to Rachel, if she's there, who may be able to say a little bit more about that, if she wouldn't mind picking that up, Rachel.
Yep, no, that's fine. Yeah, like as Donna said, we've got a series of members workshops scheduled for February, March, and then it go through the summer, just as we go through the process, so that you can feed in at the appropriate times. In terms of community engagement, the first stage is a scoping stage, which will happen in that 4-month get ready period, where we'll be asking communities how they want to be involved and scoping out issues that they want the plan to deal with. And then there is a proposed content and evidence-based consultation. So that is a little bit like issues and options. It looks at the contents of all the evidence base, direction of travel, spatial strategy, and then there's the draft plan consultation this time round. And the new requirements do mean that you are required to publish a summary of all that consultation as it happens, and exactly how those issues are being addressed at every stage along the way. But we will have a comms and engagement strategy to set all this out. I think we're just pausing until the legislation comes into place, so that when we put out those comms, it's accurate, and we don't have to kind of keep updating it as we go.
Thank you. Is that okay? Any other questions? Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Councillor Wright, I'm obsessed with timelines at the moment with LGR and everything coming up, and I just wanted to sort of, you highlighted the recruitment challenges and that are being experienced in the planning area, and I was just wondering if you could provide a little bit more, or perhaps also could provide more on how we're ensuring that the team can be made resilient. I know in other portfolios we might use fixed term posts or apprentices or those sorts of things. I was wondering what sort of efforts officers were going to ensure that we were managing the staffing risk given the time frame.
I might ask Nigel to pick this up if he doesn't mind, because he is probably a bit closer to the resourcing details. You there, Nigel?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Wright. Yeah, we're looking at a variety of angles. Obviously, we're out to permanent recruitment at the moment for one of the vacant posts in the team, but we have also created a fixed term post within the strategic planning team to provide some additional capacity in the short term. And we've also got a short term contract post in there at the moment, just while we're getting up and running, and we'll keep that under review, both from the local plan budget and from the wider directorate salary budget.
Thank you. Is that answer your question, Councillor Thomas? Any other questions? The recommendations are that Cabinet approve the broad direction of travel for the local plan review, pending formal laying and enactment of the relevant legislation and regulations. Delegate authority to the director place, in consultation with the executive member for place, to follow the creation of a new planning system. Publish the formal notice of intention to undertake a review of the local plan, and approve and publish a devised local plan timetable attached as Appendix A, subject to any alterations necessary to ensure alignment of timings with the new statutory framework. Do I have a proposer? Councillor
Propose.
Right, thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Thomas, thank you.
Second, Chair.
Shall we go to debate? Nobody up to speak on the debate at the moment? No? Shall we go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Item 9, Strategic Planning Matters. Councillor Donna Wright to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. I hope my voice holds out. So this report outlines the recent government policy updates and statutory consultations around planning and transport, including the statutory consultee system consultation, which came out in November, and the National Planning Policy Framework consultation, which was published in December, just before Christmas. So as a council, we are preparing responses to these consultations, and Cabinet will be kept informed of progress as appropriate. The NPPF consultation, as I say, only came out a couple of days before Christmas, and the deadline doesn't close until the end of March. So we are still going through the detail on this, but hope to have a draft consultation ready by February. I've already reported on changes to the local plan system under the previous item. As I mentioned as well, the Strategic Planning Board continues to meet regularly, including today when we were looking at the draft design code, and it does obviously include cross-party representation. Section 8.14 of the paper outlines progress on the 6 largest strategic sites in the local plan, which are all moving forward. Other significant sites are progressing through planning performance agreements and pre-application discussions. As part of the existing duty to cooperate, we are also obliged to maintain contact with neighbouring authorities with regards to their local plans. Excuse me, and we input to these consultations as appropriate, and page 45 and 46 kind of gives a summary on these. As part of the proposed planning reforms, the duty to cooperate will be abolished, but there will still be a strong expectation that neighbouring authorities will continue to collaborate on strategic issues. Work is also continuing on developing a vision and growth study for North East Central Hearts, working with relevant neighbouring authorities, which will support the development of a joint strategic plan for the area. So a final report is being prepared with a publication date still to be decided. Under the proposed NPPF changes, the County Council and any future mayoral authority will be responsible for preparing a spatial development strategy. And the idea will be that the work from the vision and growth study will be absorbed into a future spatial development strategy. The proposed expansion of Luton Airport rolls on. So following a judicial review in November, the High Court ruled in favour of the government, but the appellant, the Luton and District Association for the Control of Aircraft Noise, are considering a further legal appeal. So that situation will continue. Those of you who attended the recent community forums will know that the town centre strategy is out for public consultation with the closing date the 30th of January. So the bids and the parish councils have been asked to promote and encourage residents to respond to this document. So I think that's it, really. Happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wright. Any questions for Councillor Wright or her team? Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, as we move to the new plan making system, how will this update allow the council to implement even more robust environmental standards for new developments than was possible under the previous framework?
I might ask Rachel to pick up on that. Okay.
I mean, that's one of the things we'll be looking at. I think there's definitely a bit of a balancing act between looking at kind of the ambitions and all the things that we want to achieve, But one of the requirements for the plan is about viability. So as part of developing policy, we will have to look at all the costs in the round, and that will be part of the whole kind of developing the policies and doing iterations. But we do plan to, as part of that preparation work, do briefing with members as we go through that process, so that we can kind of test different options and get the most optimum outcome.
Thank you. That answer your question, Councillor Thomas? Yes, Councillor Albert.
Thanks, Chair. A couple of questions. One slightly off piece. The first one being, I think I'm conscious that were you looking or was to, I think, consult with Cabinet as to what a draft response to the NPPF might be, or would officers looking to consult with Cabinet? I'm just conscious of the timing. The timings there don't quite work in terms of when Cabinet meets next, which is sort of middle of next month, and then obviously not till the middle of April. And obviously that consultation closes around the 30th of March, is it? Something of that kind. So just really on that. And then the second question, if I can do the both at the same time. To what extent are we, the council, or indeed officers, and it might be a question for Councillor Bryant as much as around what is or isn't happening around Universal Studios and the potential impacts upon that on North Herts and indeed the county more broadly. Mr. Roche is twitching, so he may want to answer. But yeah, they're my two questions.
Thanks, Councillor Albert. I mean, in terms of the first question around the NPPF consultation, yeah, I agree that the timings don't work out very well. So I have, as you probably know, sent the link to Cabinet and asked colleagues to feedback comments to me, and I can ensure that they get included in the consultation. And there may be scope to. I mean, I'm hoping that the draft will be seen by Cabinet, but it may have to be more informally rather than via the actual Cabinet meetings, because I think the agenda is quite full for February. But we will find a way of ensuring that Cabinet have some input. In terms of the second question, I think Councillor Bryant or Anthony may have to pick that one up.
Thank you. A sort of short update. We are working with colleagues at the County Council and Hertfordshire Futures to meet jointly with the relevant local authority to understand what the opportunities are, and indeed sort of potential implications for us as an area. So that's how we're looking to take it forward.
Thank you. Another question.
Well, it's just a comment back. Is that something that we can provide as we continue some feedback both to Cabinet and indeed probably to councillors more sort of generally on that? Because I think it's clearly, obviously, it's be an issue of interest and going forward.
Certainly, what I would sort of probably warn is that there may not be a lot of information, but certainly if we do get things that we can share, we will do that.
Thank you. Good questions. Any other questions? Well, the recommendation is that Cabinet note the report on strategic planning matters. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Wright. And a seconder, please. Councillor Thomas got there before you. Councillor Thomas. Okay. Debate. I think it's fair to say there is a lot happening in a very short amount of time. And I know that the officers are working hard on this. As Councillor Albert has pointed out, we do need to make sure that the councillors in the Cabinet are kept informed, and that may be a very small piece of work ensuring that councillors are aware of the enterprise opportunities available in local authorities, and where we stand, where we sit at the middle of this, what I call my donut theory. We're in the middle of the donut, so that we've got a clear view of that. Any debate? Councillor Thomas.
No, I just wanted to say that it's fantastic that we've got all 6 sites approved in the master planning process, and that's going to be able to help us hold development partners to a higher standard. And just given the timeline considerations that we're all aware of, it's a really good position to be in. So just wanted to commend all the officers for us being in that position. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other contributions to the debate? Okay. Would you like to go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Item 10, revocation of air quality management areas in Hitchin. Councillor Mick Debenham to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just get a bit of toadying in first, I think. I just want to congratulate you, Councillor Bryant, on your appointment. I wish you every success. There you go. Order the brown nose for me. Thank you very much. Right. As you are aware, this council declared 2 air quality management areas, and now these AQMAs were declared following local air quality assessments, which resulted in identifying areas within North Hertfordshire where the statutory air quality objectives were exceeded. The declaration of the AQMAs required the development of an air quality action plan to put measures in place to reduce air pollution below objective levels. The impact of a combination of measures introduced at a local level plus measures implemented on a nationwide basis have resulted in the pollution levels in these AQMAs falling below objective levels for 5 years or more. It is UK government policy that when the pollution levels fall for 5 years or more, they must be revoked. Therefore, I'm asking you to revoke them. Appendix A relates to the Stevenage Road Hitchin site. Appendix B to the Paynes Park Hitchin site. And with them in the appendixes C, C1, C2, C3 are possibly not for today, but they're for going into the future where we go from here. They talk about the development of a local air quality strategy, air quality action plan, smoke control areas and areas where we can improve things and what other councils are doing. So maybe that's for another time, I don't know. But for today, I would recommend 2.1, the revocation of these orders. Thank you.
Very much. Any questions? Councillor Albert.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, sort of two or three questions. Mick. Probably the first one is whilst obviously recognising I don't necessarily know all of the councillors that are defecting from different parties. I suspect in paragraph 5.1 that Councillor Ruth Brown isn't the Conservative lead. Although I don't know, perhaps she is. I don't know, but Councillor Winchester might tell me otherwise. But I think it's good to understand. I think whether we sort of got any sort of feedback from in the internal consultation, particularly from any of the ward members. The second thing is that I know that you're well aware of, and I know we've got officers here as well, is around the Grove Road in Hitchin, and with myself and other councillors, and obviously Alistair Stratton as our MP, very much campaigned to get the county council and indeed the district council to do a health impact assessment. And what was disappointing, I think, was that the Environment Agency didn't want to kind of help to share the costs for that. But thanks to the district and the county council for doing that. But clearly, that health impact assessment is underway, but coming towards a conclusion. But I think I've certainly had some representations around the whether we can do some continuing air quality monitoring in Grove Road of the significant lorry and other traffic there, particularly around maybe either the Berrymead Road crossroads or indeed where obviously the waste refuse waste lorries go into, or indeed probably more particularly at the Cadwell Lane Woolgrove Road traffic lights in Grove Road as it goes up the hill, where obviously a lot of large lorries either stop and so on. So I wonder whether that's something, if we aren't obviously doing those other monitoring, whether we can do some additional or indeed continuing monitoring. I know we're doing some things while health impact assessment's going on, but whether we could do something on a more continuing basis going forward within Grove Road. And I certainly think it would help to provide some assurance to residents that there is a continuing monitoring of that, you know, just beyond what does or doesn't happen through the health impact assessment.
Yeah, I'll do the second one first, if that's all right. Yes, to both things. The health impact assessment is going on. That is running at a tangent to other stuff. Obviously, we've got to monitor air levels, or else we won't know that we need to put in a management area. So I do believe that Grove Road is being monitored as we speak. We've got a fantastic environmental health manager here, Frank Harrison. You might know the figures from there, but obviously it's not in the critical zone. And with question one, I had no feedback, but Frank may have done from our consultees.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. If I can answer first, comment on the incorrect identification of members. I do apologise for that. I shall suitably reprimand my officer accordingly. Thank you. As far as the questions asked, absolutely correct. We are monitoring in the Grove Road area. We are currently monitoring. We monitor via diffusion tubes, which are plastic tubes attached to various street furniture, usually street lamps, which passively, monitor and react in accordance with the quantity of nitrogen dioxide in the area. The NOx pollutants is solely a road vehicle pollutant, which is also the main monitoring aspect of the health impact areas. I know that we are monitoring already at that junction that you referred to. Not sure exactly where the monitoring is, but I understand it's on the south side. My officers can give you the exact lampposts where they are attached if need be. Certainly going forward on that aspect, we manage where we place the diffusion tubes around the district. We currently have 42 around the whole of the district. We can consider the most appropriate place for those, although all consideration will be to monitor road traffic pollutions, and hence the location of those need to be roughly near as close as possible to serious road traffic areas. I'm aware that some of the concerns, digressing slightly, of the Hitchin area are not directly associated with road traffic, and those points are being considered by county as an aside aspect of the health impacts area, but obviously our components on this are just to do with the road traffic. The report is obviously in relation to the revocation of the air quality monitoring areas, and certainly one of the considerations that going forward, is whether or not and to what extent we may wish to consider our own localized versions of, for want of a better term, air quality monitoring areas, monitoring devices, portable devices essentially. They are referenced to in the accompanying report for the future air quality strategy, but that will be something we could consider looking at going forward. There will obviously be cost implications on those portable devices, but certainly to answer your question, Councillor, yes, we will monitor along Grove Road, continue to do so while there is a foreseeable risk, and are happy to review the locations of the monitoring stations. I hope that answers questions. Thank you.
So that was that's your answer to question 2.
I think
Well, you asked about feedback.
they didn't have any feedback.
Sorry, my apologies. No, I'm not aware of any feedback having come through other than from myself, sir.
Can I just a brief feedback? No, this is just a follow up to so it's kind of 2A, yeah. I mean I support the principle what's in the paper here. I guess almost referring back to the previous item that that Councillor Wright raised, which obviously included Luton Airport expansion, because clearly part of the Luton Airport expansion proposals are sort of road changes in those exact areas that are we are sort of currently now removing the monitoring. I'm just really sort of thinking forward, just sort of how we might want to think about that, especially if when Luton Airport expansion does happen, and obviously clearly conversations with the project there and so on, as to whether we'd had any thoughts in relation to that, because certainly those junctions are, again, I suspect, going to become hotspots, or whatever the appropriate phrase is here in the future. Hence the reason why, whilst it was only fairly moderate or minimal, but the Luton Airport project was looking to do or help to fund some road changes in that area.
I'm happy to, thank you. The easy answer to that question is that I'm very pleased to say that my air quality specialist officer who prepared this report and is working on the air quality monitoring is also responding to the agencies involved in the expansion of Luton Airport, which is consistency and allows all the information to be retained. As far as the concerns regarding the increase in road traffic, I'm very aware that this was one of the points raised as a potential objection to the proposal to expand Luton Airport. The responses from Luton, sorry, I can't remember the current name for the Luton Enterprise Company. Yeah, anyway, their response was that they foresaw negligible or minimal additional road traffic, such that it would affect the local residences or residential areas. And I think they were basing their assessments partially on the increased number of electric vehicles or low to zero emissions vehicles, but also that the majority of the LLA users would come via the M1. I can't say I entirely agree with that, but it's certainly something that we have raised. Insofar as our ongoing monitoring of those areas, excuse me, clearly we will do that. And where we see that the road traffic is significantly changing in our district, again, they will be key locations where we put the diffusion tubes, if I reference back to the previous answer I gave about those, so that we will keep monitoring the local pollution levels from caused by the road, whether they're caused by the airport or any other local development. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we now go back to question 1? Has that been answered now? You've got your full set then? That's fine. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanting to ask if we can simplify a bit, because I think while it's right that we are revoking these orders, just can you reassure the public in sort of more simple terms that this isn't an end to the work? I feel like that just happened in detail, but maybe just a sort of a slightly more York Notes version, just that the air quality is still being monitored.
Quality is being monitored. So it's legislation that we've got to revoke the areas if for 5 years you've continually on the downward trend, which we've done, but the monitoring goes on, and if the levels were to go back up again, then maybe we could start back where we started from, but hopefully that won't go to that.
Sorry, Chair. Councillor Thomas, if I can just add a supplementary to that. There is the legal requirement that, as Councillor Devenant mentioned, that 5 years or more of lower than the threshold limits require us to revoke. There isn't a set system in place to reintroduce an air quality monitoring area, but The compensatory action that we have to take upon revocation is to create that air quality strategy, which we're in the process of starting. But as to, if I can add the reassurance as well, we will continue monitoring air quality throughout the district for road traffic pollution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the recommendation is that Cabinet approve the revocation orders as appended to this report for the following areas. The number 1, AQMA Stevenage Road, Hitchin. Number 2, AQMA Paynes Park, Hitchin. Can I have a proposer, please?
I would like to propose that, please.
Thank you. It's Councillor Debenham and a seconder. Councillor Albert. Any debate? No debate? No. Shall we go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Right, thank you. Yes. Thank you, Frank. If you want to leave now, that's fine. Or you can stay and enjoy. Item 11, Q2 Council Delivery Plan Update. This is a referral from ONS. Can I invite Councillor Claire Winchester, Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee, to present the referral on this item, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Albert for his report to Overview and Scrutiny. It's really clear there's lots of great work being done. The committee were really pleased to see the clear narrative around the reasons for delays and changes to milestones, and also that encouraged that there are clear plans to resolve those issues. The recommendation was approved, and we look forward to the report to full council on Churchgate next month, and certainly welcome the associated member briefings to ensure a productive debate around that. I think committee were really pleased that Cabinet recognises the gravity and scale of that project and how much it means to the people of Hitchin and North Herts more generally. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Councillor Winchester? No. Can I then go to Councillor Ian Albert to present the report?
Cheers, thanks, Chair, and obviously thanks to sort of scrutiny colleagues for their work and questions on this, and obviously to Mr. Cooper and his team for obviously preparing the paper. The report outlined the most recent update for the council delivery plan, including the key performance indicators and the associated risks. Members can access more detail through IdeaGen as detailed in paragraph 8.10 of the report. 2 projects have been completed, which are the King George V Skate Park in Hitchin and the implementation of the waste and street cleansing contract, and particularly I know the King George V Skate Park as I think has been very well received. Actions to address the KPIs with the red status have been set out in paragraph 8.4, although the KPI relating to Careline installation had seen a recent improvement. As well as the usual updates, we asked to approve the new KPIs detailed in paragraph 8.7. These are in response to the corporate peer challenge that recommended we have KPIs that are better aligned to the council plan. Obviously, Councillor Winchester mentioned specifically about Churchgate, and I think there obviously will be, as part, I think, of the Enterprise Directorate report that will be coming to ONS. I think there'll be a sort of a top level update on Churchgate. The Churchgate project board that was due to take place on the 20th January was postponed to allow some kind of further work around the development options. So we're still obviously hoping to be able to do a member briefing next month. But I think we'll need to sort of come back in a bit more detail as to when further reports will come to Cabinet and or council, and as to wherever that the process that will need to be done on that. But hopefully that's something that we can discuss with scrutiny on their next meeting, and clearly with Cabinet at our next meeting. Obviously I certainly mentioned there about obviously the work that we're doing in relation to obviously I think making sure that we've got MI that we can present to scrutiny and elsewhere in relation to the waste contract, particularly around mist bin data, and how we obviously split out the North Herts and East Herts amounts and so on. But I think obviously that work is continuing, and I think it's also worth sort of flagging here again that there are overarching resists on resourcing, and obviously the LGR, local government reorganisation, they both have an impact on capacity. And of course, as we'll discuss later, we'll need to be very mindful of that when setting out our budgets and priorities for the next year. But I'm happy to move the recommendations, Chair, in the paper, and obviously we've got officers himself here to ask any questions from Cabinet.
Thank you. Should we have questions first? Any questions? Councillor Debenham.
Thanks, Chair. Looking at your KPI table or proposed things to monitor, I was just wondering, some of the stuff, say in my area, it's all good stuff. Measuring number of food, premises expected, etc., etc. Who is going to set like the target? How are we going to know what's good, what's bad, and what's indifferent?
If I could maybe ask Mr. Cooper to pick that, will give you the technical explanation of how we're at the next stages of this. I think it's worth saying just right up front, this is not a perfect science, and I think that so there's very much a work in progress and a kind of first shot at this to discuss clearly with Cabinet and obviously with scrutiny colleagues, Councillor Winchester and the colleagues on scrutiny. But if I could pass over to Mr. Cooper, maybe just to give you a further response.
Thank you. The current plan is that we will measure them first and then start to develop, I guess, in Cabinet in consultation with ONS, looking at what measures we might set targets for. We already have measures we don't have targets for, so it's not required to have targets attached to our KPIs, but clearly it's useful in some examples.
Is that okay? Right, thank you. Yes, Anthony.
Thank you, Chair. The Corporate Peer Challenge got a mention, so I thought it'd be a good time to share news hot off the press. We have now received the follow-up report from the Local Government Association that arrived yesterday. So that will be reported to the next meetings of scrutiny and Cabinet in February.
Thank you. So can we have a proposer, please, for the recommendation? That is Councillor Albert, and can we have a seconder? Which is Councillor Debenham.
Happy to say.
Thank you. Any debate? No. Should we go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Item 12, the Council Tax Reduction Scheme, Effectiveness and Proposals for 2026-27. There's a referral from ONS. Can I invite Councillor Claire Winchester to present the referral?
Thank you, Chair. Again, we appreciated this report and were able to investigate and hear more about the steps taken to encourage uptake of the scheme. And I think that's where committee would like to see further attention. there was a considerable discussion about the age of people who might be eligible and who might be receiving the information, and where awareness of the scheme might be profitably raised. The committee also established that it could be helpful to maybe understand a little bit more about where the referrals were coming from to the council as well, and in order to make sure that customer service were able to efficiently signpost and make people aware of it. Yeah, we again, yeah, appreciated the difficulties, I think, in understanding exactly how efficient and how well it's working. But I think we were also really impressed about the thoughtfulness that has gone into trying our very best to consider people on very low incomes and ensure that we can help avoid people dying in poverty and living in poverty. So we were very happy to recommend that.
Thank you. So can I assume that what you would like is for us to focus on who is the target group to benefit from this scheme, and how we reach that target?
Yes, I think there was some discussion about the demographics of people likely to be, and the fall in use amongst pension age or those approaching pension age. Obviously not pension age, that's different again, but I think we are really aware that people find information about council services in very different places than they used to, and different demographic residents of different ages and demographics in our district will be completely unaware of some of the opportunities for poverty alleviation that the council does offer, and we'd just like to really make sure that we're taking every opportunity to really raise awareness and make sure that everyone that's eligible is aware of that, and that they are signposted to it at an earliest possible opportunity.
Thank you. It's clear. Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Winchester? No? Thank you, Councillor Winchester. Councillor Albert to present the report.
Cheers, and I think obviously Councillor Winchester made some really sort of salient, and the committee raised some really sort of salient and important points, and certainly in response that we took away, as you'll see from the referral, about looking how we can increase publicity of the scheme in all sorts of different ways, and I think that is critical. It is obviously an access we touched on earlier on. It's obviously entitlement to the council tax reduction scheme also gives you a concession for garden waste and so on. So this is, I think it's a really important area of our of our services. So yeah, very happy to take on board the points that scrutiny colleagues have made, and we'll look to see what what further we can do in relation to that. I mean, I think briefly just to say, I mean, obviously, as the report says, the history of council tax support offered to working age residents includes the introduction of a banded scheme in April 23, which was detailed in section 7, and I think that has been a really important change for the council. It's agreed, by the joint administration then, and obviously continued by this Labour administration, and I've been really pleased to be the responsible executive member for taking that forward since then, with obviously officer support. Regulations for council tax report related to pension age are set obviously by government rather than the council, obviously, just to be clear. More detail on the current scheme, including a assessment of its effectiveness and affordability, was provided beginning of section 8. I think we have also looked at sort of disregards incorporated into the scheme as set out in the paper, and to say certainly following from something I'd picked up, and obviously also obviously Councillor Prendergast had written to me about certainly the work being done by Marie Curie and Manchester City Council to help prevent how we can help residents from dying in poverty, and the actions that local authorities can take to address this through council tax reduction and our discretionary schemes. And we've continued to have contact with Marie Curie. We've had a further reply from them, and they recognise the complexities involved, and looking obviously to local councils to see how they can best determine that. And we will continue to look to see how we can provide that discretionary support. We've also been looking, and I think this is really, again, an important area, because once you have banding, I think, I have to be careful here, because I think I said it in another place. There's probably an important message also sometimes to to whoever is at any given time the Chancellor of the Exchequer. It's an issue around making sure that you actually do uplift those bands, and clearly one of the things that has happened this year is that the increases to universal credit awards being higher than 3.8%. We've been looking about as to whether the band increases should be higher than that 3.8%. That's to stop households falling into paying council tax, and clearly then the council tax that they are then due to pay eroding the benefit of the increase in the benefits they receive, that vicious circle. So we're looking to be able to do that, and we'll obviously provide a further update that, but we're very much minded to look to increasing the bands to make sure that people don't drop out of our council tax reduction scheme. Recognise that will be a little bit more expensive in overall costs, but I think it's important to be able to provide and to continue to provide this support. So I think I'm really, as I said at the scrutiny meeting, I really obviously I think our officers, I really don't think our officers here, people like Geraldine Goodwin, Anne Banner, and all the team, I think, for the work they do in actually talking to the public, dealing with people's inquiries, and obviously and making sure that we've got, that people are aware about the council tax reduction scheme. And I'm very happy to move, Chair, that we propose this scheme and take it forward to the council meeting. And I can recommend the paper and the recommendations within it.
Thank you. Can we have a seconder, please? Yes. It's because Councillor Albert did it in the wrong order. Right. Okay. So we'll get questions. I'm putting my question first. You mentioned two of our officers, Anne Banner and Jerry Goodwin, and they have been working with the North Herts Cost of Living Alliance, which is about 18 months old, which is as representatives of the groups North Herts, but they're mainly based on Letchworth, such as the Heritage Foundation, Citizens Advice, Age Concern, the housing associations, ourselves. So they're working together to actually give the best service possible for those who've got problems with dealing with the cost of living. So they're not having to do the hoops, different hoops for different people. And so that is, I think, will helpful, and it's also be helpful with what Councillor Winchester was questioning. So that was my question. I'm now going to go to Councillor Devenant.
Thank you, Chair. I know we're not debating yet. Obviously, I support it. It's brilliant. I've never even stopped thinking about it. I just wondered, how are we outliers? Does everybody do this? Do we know how our schemes compare to other authorities around us, whether they have one, in fact, or just a curiosity?
Well, every council will have a scheme, and indeed, obviously, a number of others have adopted the a banded scheme. But again, I don't know whether, Mr. Cooper, there's anything you want to add, sort of specifically on that.
No, there's definitely a mixture. There are more and more people moving to banded schemes, but there are still schemes out there which are on the traditional basis, whereby everyone pays their contribution, however small, but everyone pays their contribution. So everyone's paying some council tax. There's definitely a mixture.
Thank you. Can I just add that the the Marie Curie scheme. It was Daniel who came, Alan who came across it. It's the City of Manchester. We heard it at a conference. It sounded brilliant, so that's why we're trying to introduce it here. Councillor Williams.
Can I ask how many residents are expected to benefit from the uplift, and do we know which groups are most likely to be positively impacted?
I haven't got those figures to hand, but we can certainly provide them, or certainly provide some detail on that. Ian, if you.
Yeah, the intention of the uplift is to try and maintain the same number broadly of people paying council tax reduction scheme. The analysis showed that single people were generally unaffected, but any group bigger, so any family groups would be significantly affected if we didn't uplift the bands, particularly in relation to the universal credit side of it. So that's what we're trying to achieve, is to try and maintain the same number of people, not more people, not less people, but that same number.
Thank you.
And just to add on that, but clearly, obviously, we're always aware in making. I mean, someone who worked for the Department for Work and Pensions for many years, the issue of take up of benefits and making sure people are aware, as Councillor Winchester said earlier on, this is obviously clearly part of the importance, obviously making sure that people are aware of it in our literature when we send out council tax bills, other things of that kind, that the scheme is there and so on.
Thank you. I'll read out the recommendations and I'll go on to the debate. So the recommendation is that I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Yes, of course you can.
It was just about the implementation of the banding scheme. Obviously, it's been in 2-3 years now. It's 3 years. Has there been any difficulty with claimants understanding the new scheme, the banded scheme? Have we had more inquiries, appeals? Has it been successful in that sense?
I mean, the key part. Let me first say the key part. One of the reasons for introducing that is obviously we now have, and obviously clearly DWP and elsewhere has got a much more information as you go on people's wages as they differ and so on. So clearly one of the things here is about having that banded scheme is that it makes for actually fewer adjustments that as people's wages might go up and down and so on. So you end up with not having to kind of completely redo their council tax reduction entitlement, month on month as their wages change. So very much part of obviously doing what we did was simplifying that and making it much more able to avoid having to kind of continually change people's benefit on this. I mean, I don't know whether Ian, you've had particularly any sort of feedback from the staff who operate it at the Coalface.
No, I'm not aware of any particular issues around implementing it. I think it's been worked really well.
Any more questions? No? So, recommendations that Cabinet recommends to Council that it amend the council tax discretionary policy to include the support provided to residents with a terminal illness with the wording detailed in paragraph 8.17. Approve changes to the council tax reduction scheme bands to reflect the impact of inflation. Now, this is where I've lost track. Now I've had a proposer. We'll start with it again. Proposer Ian Albert, seconder Councillor Debenham. Thank you. Debate. No? Should we go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Item 13, second quarter capital budget monitoring review, 25-26. Referral from FAR. which I think Councillor Albert is going to do, and then present his own report.
Well, I wasn't actually aware until you mentioned it earlier on that that's there. I think, I mean, obviously the report speaks for itself, so to speak. But again, obviously, thanks to FAR College. I mean, I think there was a number of questions, and including obviously one of the things that we looked at there, which was around to discuss with Democratic Services and is around timing of meetings and trying to see whether where we've got, for example, here a Q2 report, that clearly this becomes relatively distant in time for all of these Q2 reports by the time they wend their way through to FAR, to Cabinet, and in some instances to any recommendations to a full council itself. So I think there's kind of timing of meetings, but I mean there was a number of questions there. We had quite an interesting question around the access issue to the Lairridge car park, around how we get a vehicle up there to actually do the resurfacing of the Lairridge car park. But so I think most of those other things are sort of stand for themselves. And there was any specific recommendations from FAR to Cabinet. Chair, if you just to continue on, that report summarises, say, our position at Q2, but obviously we've also tried here in doing that to include more recent updates, especially in relation to the leisure decarbonisation project. Following discussion, overview and scrutiny on the museum storage information note and the report at FAR, we're recommending that we can reduce our forecast spend on the museum storage down to £3 million, and that would then alter, Chair, the recommendation at 2.2 from 1.773 million to 773,000 instead, to reflect that change in the museum storage budget, and I hope that's a welcome recommendation. We're asking, obviously, Cabinet to approve the adjustments to the capital programme and the timetable of schemes detailed in tables 2 and 3. As I say, we obviously had quite a good discussion at the overview and scrutiny around around that sort of museum storage project, and obviously I've touched on that reduction in the capital budget for that. The one thing, obviously, probably just to note within here, that there is some which is in the report, which is about an additional 50,000 that will be requested in relation to the both demand and the pricing increase of domestic bins, and you'll see that in the report. And we also detail there a forecast overspend in relation to the decarbonisation project as outlined at table 3. That overspend, though, was within the 5% tolerance set in the budget. I think, therefore, Chair, that's I think all I really need to say on this report. Obviously happy, and obviously we've got Mr. Cooper here to help answer any detailed questions. And then, if you wish me to, I can move the report now, or I can remove it when you ask me to move it in a few minutes' time.
I suppose we'll ask for some questions. Any questions? Councillor Debenham.
Yeah, only the obvious one. There's probably a million good reasons why, but you talk about the time lag and where you're talking about things that are now quite old. Is there anything we can do going forward to reduce that?
Well, I think, I mean, it's less, let's say, it's less clearly around the when the reports are done, because obviously Mr. Cooper and his team are getting the reports done. It's just trying to work through the timing of the meetings, and then obviously the timing of the cabinet meeting. I mean, I don't know, Ian, if there's anything you want to add as to whether we can, is a way we kind of help to bring that process so it's become slightly more timely.
I mean, it's pretty much down to the committee dates during the year, and once they're set, then that kind of sets when the quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, and quarter four happens. So we do our best by kind of making a report the time we can when they do come to you.
Of course not.
Just there had to be a reason for it. So.
Thank you. So, recommendations. The Cabinet note the forecast expenditure of 26.416 million, 25-26 on the capital programme. Approve the adjustments to the capital programme in 26-27 as a result of the revised timetable of schemes detailed in Table 2 and 3, increasing the estimated spend to 0.773 million. Note the position of the availability of capital resources as detailed in Table 4, paragraph 8.6, and the requirement to keep the capital programme under review for affordability. Can I have a proposer, please? Yeah, Councillor Ian Albert, and a seconder. Councillor Wright, thank you. Any debate? No? Right, shall we go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Item 14, second quarter revenue budget monitoring review, 25-26. Referral from FAR, if Councillor Albert will indulge us, and then Councillor Albert's report.
Just scroll to the relevant yeah. Again, there's nothing sort of specific. I think the FAR asked us in relation, I think, to the second quarter revenue budget monitoring review. I think obviously we've looked. There's some questions around the community wellbeing team, the leisure centre statistics, and obviously also that the forecasting had already considered the payment needed to cover the loss of income to everyone active during the decarbonisation works. But they're saying there's no specific things that FAR asked to bring to Cabinet's attention beyond those sort of questions that were asked and responded to in the report. In terms of the second quarter revenue report itself, covers its usual sort of format. The projected ongoing spend increase from Table 2 had been reflected in the draft budget report, which we're covering. The pattern of spend variances is consistent with quarter 2 reports in previous years. There are a number of pay cost variances, generally due to gaps in recruitment and cost of temporary staff. There are also a number of carry forward requests for work that will not be completed this year. A summary of significant variances, which included overspend, underspend and carry forward, was outlined in Table 3 of the report, and paragraph 8.4 looks at carry forwards from last year and whether they were spent in this financial year. There were some examples where money was still reserved for a specific purpose but had not been spent in this financial year. Corporate health indicators, and clearly that isn't cabinet by the sound. There is a cabinet health indicator, but which is probably at red at the moment, I suspect. But beyond that, the corporate health indicators are outlined at Table 4 in the report, which looked at the major income streams for the council. The leisure centre management fee income was flagged as red, as I mentioned, around to the decarbonisation project, and there'd been a slight reduction in garden waste subscribers and the commercial refuse collections, which will clearly keep under review as we go forward. Parking income, though, was increasing, and the general funding position and the allocation going forward outlined at paragraph 8.8 of the report. A minimum general fund balance was set at the start of the year, which accounted for specific and unknown risks. And specific risks were monitored throughout the year, and the allowance on this had turned negative, which indicated that the council had underestimated this risk. So there's three recommendations in the report, which I won't move now until Councillor Bryant asks me to, but I'm obviously open to questions on the report.
Any questions? No. So the recommendations, that's Cabinet, note this report, approve the change to 25-26 General Fund budget as identified in Table 3 and paragraph 8.2, an 846,000 decrease in net expenditure. Note the changes to the 26-27 General Fund budget as identified in Table 3 and paragraph 8.2, a total of 555k increase in net expenditure. These will be incorporated in the draft revenue budget for 26-27. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Albert, and a seconder, please. You go on strike, Councillor Deverman.
Very good at finance.
Should we go to the debate? No debate. Shall we go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. So what I propose to do is to do item 15 and then have a short break, if you can survive that long. Item 15, second quarter Treasury Management Review 25-26. Councillor Albert to do the referral for FAR if he feels like it, and then his report.
Thank you, Chair. As you'll see in the report and the referral from FAR, it was clearly obviously a discussion where after the Director for Resources, Mr. Cooper, had highlighted about the overinvestment in the period and the fact that a further step had been added to the process to ensure that this didn't happen again. And obviously there was a bit of a discussion in relation to that, but obviously also a discussion that around the local, obviously because we do invest with a number of local authorities, that local authority investments are secure, even where a council have been issued with a section 114 notice that those investments with that council would be repaid, and that obviously is very much part of the process. So these are very secure investments, but obviously do recognise there was that breach which we have sought to put in place, a process that won't happen again. Clearly, as I say, this is obviously the report around the investment of our surplus cash. It's positive that our forecasts investment returns have increased. As highlighted at FAR, the estimates for 26-27 will be reviewed as part of the budget setting process. Obviously, I've touched on the breach already. The total interest earned to date, as well as the forecast to year end, is outlined in paragraph 8.3 of the report. There's obviously a mix of investments outlined in paragraph 4, with most of these being with other local authorities, although there was now a little bit of money now being invested again in building societies, which we haven't had for a little while. Full detail in the investments was shown in paragraph 8.5 of the report, which included the risk of default and credit rating details. And probably worth just adding here, Chairs, that Mr. Cooper and I have a meeting with our investment advisor, obviously to undertake the we clearly need to do this reasonably quickly, review of the investment strategy in line with the motion that was carried at council before Christmas, and we've got a meeting next week to have a conversation about that. So not directly related to the report, but just obviously just to inform cabinet that piece of work is going forward, and we'll clearly update council and cabinet in due course. So yes, I'll finish there, and I'm sure people are looking forward to their break. If they have any questions, that's fine. Otherwise, I'm happy to move the recommendations in a moment.
Any questions? No? Would you like to? You can do it this time.
Happy to move the recommendations, Chair.
A proposer? It's Councillor Albert, and a seconder, Councillor Debenham. Debate? No? Shall we go to the vote then, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Shall we have a break now? If we have a break of 9 minutes, and that will take us to 9:05. We are live, thank you. We're going to transpose the order of the two remaining items. So we're going to go first of all to item 17, risk management governance mid-year update. Referral from FAR, if he would like to do so, and report then by Councillor Ian Albert.
The pedant in me wants to ask whether you can have two main items, but I'll leave that aside and for another. But you're much cleverer than me, Val. The thing that so on risk management, and obviously in terms of the referral, first, as you'll see from the report, that I think FAR colleagues asked a number of questions. We clearly looked at one of the questions was around the financial stability risks, and we certainly will look to see, bearing in mind the settlement and where we are currently, as in future reviews, that may well be a risk that can be reviewed and possibly reduced. The local plan review had changed in its risk score, which was awaiting some government clarity on the process. Clearly, Councillor Wright has set out some more detail earlier on in the evening. Obviously, that's again obviously a score that we'll continue to look at. And obviously, also we talked to, and obviously FAR College also discussed about the cybersecurity risk training, and that obviously was another issue that will be addressed and covered. In terms of the overarching report, this provides an overview of our risk management arrangements and intentionally has a governance focus. Some minor changes to the risk management framework are highlighted in paragraph 8.1.2 for approval by Cabinet. Some of the information on risk duplicates what's in the council delivery plan, although generally with a slightly different focus. Although some risk scores did not change, there was ongoing work to address them, and risk reviews mainly broadly happen on time. Review of the actions from the previous report and the progress in 25-26 against these actions was outlined in section 12. And indeed, risks during the first half of the year of 25-26 until September are detailed in paragraphs 8.2.4 and 8.2.5. Mentioned it just now around the financial stability risk, and obviously the clearly a high risk that also relates to local government reorganisation and obviously generally resourcing sort of issues. But clearly, obviously, these are things that hopefully, certainly in relation to the resourcing issues that we do have now with the 3-year settlement, some level of greater certainty. So I think that was really all I intended specifically to cover, Chair, in terms of risk management update for this meeting. But clearly, obviously, if colleagues have any specific questions, then we can obviously more than happy to pick those up.
Thank you, Councillor Albert. Questions, Councillor Wright?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I'll try and be coherent. The first one was about the service risk rating. So I think it mentioned somewhere there's about 40 on the risk register. So if I'm correct, I think they're determined by each of the directorates. So I'm just wondering, there can be some subjectivity in determining whether there's something's a high or say a medium risk. And I'm just wondering what overview there is to ensure that there is a consistent approach applied across the directorates. And the second question was around the risk performance and management group. There's quite a lot of mention of that group, and I'm just wondering who sits on that body.
Do you want to pick up that in terms of the service director and the RPMG?
Yeah, certainly. So we have a risk officer who will support in the assessment of risk. So that's kind of the first stage of kind of getting some kind of coordination between what the various risk scores will be, and also, as you mentioned, the risk and performance management group. that group also sees all new risks, including the service risks, and they can obviously comment on the risk scores attached to those new risks when they come in to sort of provide that kind of check as well. That group is made up of a number of officers, all with kind of focus on the risk field, so includes our insurance and SIAS, so Shared Internal Audit Service, colleagues from the Hertfordshire County Council, our risk officer, directors attend on a sort of rotating basis to kind of present their current risks. Myself as the officer risk lead, Councillor Albert as the member risk lead. There is also a standing invite to members of both FAR and of scrutiny as well, and they're welcome to attend whenever they can.
Thank you, Councillor Albert.
I mean, and only really perhaps just to say, presumably there wouldn't be any issue, Ian, if cabinet, particularly obviously newer cabinet members, wanted to come along, on an ad hoc basis or to observe a meeting.
Yeah, no, when we come in to observe, see what goes on, that's absolutely fine.
Thank you. Any other questions? So, recommendations that Cabinet note the mid-year risk management governance update, approve the changes to the risk management framework. Have a proposer, please. Councillor Ian Albert, and the seconder, Councillor Williams. Debate. I've got to say, I'm just looking through, number is it? 8.26, I think it is. And all the mitigating measures that are being taken. It is 8.2.6. It is actually, I think, very impressive. Do we get feedback on all of these? And that was a nod from Councillor Albert. Okay. Right. Any other debate? No? Right. Shall we go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. So now we're going to return to item 16. Review and capital budgets for 2026 to 2027 onwards. The referral and report from Councillor Ian Albert, please.
Chair, thanks, Chair. And clearly, obviously, a really critical paper, which was, was examined in some detail by finance colleagues. You see the areas that Mr. Cooper highlighted at the meeting, and obviously also clearly in relation to the importance of the new information that we'd had around, for example, the pension scheme, the extended producer responsibility allowance, and so on. And so I think the obviously where colleagues had specifically sort of asked questions around the fair funding review, both obviously in terms of minimum level of general fund reserves that we're required to keep. Obviously, there were certainly some questions around the marketing spend for Careline, and obviously looking forward in terms of the Churchgate project manager role that was also discussed there. But there were no sort of specific recommendations from the committee to cabinet to review. So turning to the full paper, I mean, I think the first thing to say is that I think it's extraordinarily welcome for the first time in many years that this council and indeed other councils have got a 3-year settlement. Whilst obviously the amounts for the second and third year are kind of estimates, and clearly those amounts could vary. What this does is provide us with that level of certainty and the ability to actually look at what is the right level for our priorities, the right level of investments that we make, and we'll touch on those in a bit more detail as I sort of go through this report. When we set our medium-term financial strategy, there was a high level of uncertainty regarding that future funding. We didn't set targets for savings in 26, 27 in the MTFS, but members were made aware that there may be a need to make those savings and potentially some large savings, that potentially the reserves could be used to fill that funding gap while we looked or indeed able to implement those those savings and efficiencies. We conducted a budget survey with the aims of this, and the results are provided within section 8 of the report. In December, the provisional settlement was provided by government, and the amount outlined in the provisional settlement was higher than expected, very much at the higher end of the range. And as I said earlier, that having that level of certainty, I think is really critical to the discussions that we'll have at this meeting and indeed our next meeting, and when we come to presenting our final budget at the end of February. We've been notified of our estimated allocation for extended producer responsibility funding, and also had confirmation of our pensions contributions for the next 3 years following the actuarial results from the Hertfordshire pension scheme. And both of these are positive in terms of our forecast position. Indeed, our pension contributions as an employer fall by over £1 million a year, around about £1.2 million a year, because of the good performance of the Hertfordshire pension scheme. I think it's worth emphasising here something, that all our assumptions, and indeed the government assumptions, are based on us increasing as a council council tax by 2.99%, the maximum we can, which is vital, I believe, for our medium-term sustainability, whether we're a district council or indeed in the future as part of a unitary council. And we've had in the past some people suggest that we've got good levels of reserves, perhaps we could freeze council tax. Now, I reject that as a solution. That would be an ongoing loss of funding of over £400,000 per year, each and every year. And due to compounding, of course, that amount increases over each and every year. And I just do not believe that is the right answer. But actually, in increasing our council tax at that percentage, I think is the right way forward, and that's what we'll be proposing as part of the budget when it comes to full council next month. Overall, we're currently looking at a balanced budget by 28-29, with most of the shortfall in the 2 preceding years due to allocating funding for work on LGR. And you will see in the papers that we have set aside £1 million each year for £2 million in total as a specific LGR funding reserve. Hopefully we won't need necessarily to spend all of that, or indeed many of that, but clearly I think it's right to be prudent and be able to set that money aside. And I'm sure obviously colleagues here are involved probably more closely even than I am on the LGR process, will be able to comment and support that's the right thing to do. This would mean a manageable use of our reserves, subject to finalising budget estimates, and indeed, obviously, there is a scope to use some excess reserves for investment in the district, and obviously some of those reserves can be capitalised. Any spend, obviously, in doing that, and I'll touch on some of the ideas that we're working on at the moment, need to be properly budgeted, resourced to make sure it's deliverable, and ensure it provided value for money, and indeed both value for money and indeed social value. So we have a number of ideas that we're working on, and we're looking to be able to proceed with on the basis, certainly these first 2 or 3 items that I mentioned, that would be very much part of looking at how we capitalise some of those reserves. The largest one of those is around the Royston Learner Pool. Now, I certainly hope to be able to come with some good news next month that we are able to proceed with that project. It's not a decision for this evening, but I think obviously that we've had the ability, we've had updated costings, but indeed by converting some of our reserves to capital, this can work out broadly cost neutral over the longer period. And I do hope, and so we've got a meeting with Royston councillors, with officers, myself and Councillor Allen later in the week, and we're certainly hoping that we'll be able to proceed with the Royston Learner Pool, and I think that will be something that will be welcomed, I think, across North Herts by the residents in Royston, and indeed I think it's not only be a value for money project, but also at that point I think it'll also be a huge social value as well. And I think that's something I think as an administration, it's why we wanted last year to set aside some work to do that feasibility. And I proposed that as part of the budget a year ago, and I think this is now we get to the outturn of that. So I'm very much hoping that we will be able to proceed. Obviously at the moment we're doing lots of work around Churchgate, but clearly one of the things that we are looking at within Hitchin, and it will maybe in the future apply to other towns, but looking specifically, I think in Hitchin, how we can make best use of our car parks in the town. And the project we're looking to go ahead with, which would be both some additional digital and indeed physical signage. So digital signage is about, as you've seen in lots of towns, around how many car park places are in a specific sort of car park. We're looking to go forward with a project that would also need, I think, both some additional sort of physical sort of signage as part of that project, just to actually make sure that people, once they know that there's a space in a particular car park, they know how to get there. And there's a sign on the road to tell them how to do that. And I think that is something I think that would be welcomed, and we could see how we can actually improve the use of our car parks in the town. I think additionally the other item there that we are looking at, which is I think will be welcomed by users, residents, and so on, which is an additional water play feature at the North Herts Leisure Centre. We've done obviously lots of work there, but we've got a proposal around an additional water play feature there. And again, these things can hopefully boost the number of users. Actually, it will be something that will be a legacy for the future, and I think that's really important as well. We will obviously continue to review the Churchgate project to make sure we've got the appropriate resources for the next sort of stages of that project. There are some additional sort of small sort of ideas. These would be sort of revenue costs around some planting at Broadway Gardens in Letchworth. Some feasibility of doing some feasibility work about the remodelling of the Grange recreation ground in Letchworth, which hopefully would allow some work that's done up front to allow us actually to see what, particularly bearing in mind the developments in Letchworth, to actually then to go forward working with the Heritage Foundation on what Section 106 money that might be needed. There's been a long outstanding issue, I think, about allotment provision in Great Ashby, and I think we will look to see what might be doable on that. I mean, there is limited capacity to be able to do some of this work, and clearly, obviously, we need, ultimately, no doubt, to talk to the community council and so on. But I'm looking to see what we might be able to put in the budget in relation to that. There's I think some additional sort of features we're looking at to help complete the Riverside Walk and make that a really attractive thing in Hitchin, for for families, particularly to use and be a really attractive place to come. We're also, because at the moment there's certainly no increase within the county council budget, looking to provide continuing one-off support to our community fora, whichever you prefer, which we did last year, and we would look to provide that again. I know that not all of the, probably not, perhaps not any, but certainly not all of the community fora have spent all of their money. But I know, in talking to Councillor Bryant, we've got a new grant application coming on stream back to you, and hopefully that will make it a simpler process for community groups to bid. And I think we've also got a meeting with the chairs of the community forums coming up in relation, I think, to sort of how we can encourage groups and different groups to apply. We know we've got lots of really fantastic community groups in their area who are very good at bidding for money, but we want to reach out beyond those. Not that these aren't wonderful groups, but we want to actually to get out to some of the groups that that wouldn't necessarily think of applying. So, but again, we want to support that. Again, I think another sort of legacy piece of work, where, as it works out, our memorandum of understanding with 3 organisations that are really important to us come up and end in March. That's the Citizens Advice, North Herts Minority Ethnic Forum, and North Herts CVS. These are hugely important organisations for delivering the services and priorities that we have as a council, and we will look to see what we can do to support those organisations, and what may be any additional support that, if we can afford that, to those organisations over and above a simple inflationary uplift. We know that those organisations have financial challenges. All of those organisations need to obviously demonstrate their coverage of all the parts of our district, and that's more obvious in some instances than others. But clearly, obviously, also, we know that Citizens Advice itself is going through quite significant restructuring sort of process. And then I think, obviously, finally, something that was discussed at the Museum Project Board last week, time flies, was looking at what would be a backstop. We're looking to apply for grants to support some of our outreach work in relation to the move of the museum storage from Berryme Road in Hitchin over to Letchworth over the course of the next sort of 2 years, 18 months, 2 years, and looking how we can engage with the community in relation and get volunteers in to help support that. And obviously, but we clearly need some resource to help manage that project and how that's done. We're looking to apply for grants, but we may need to just maybe look to see what would be a minimum program to help support that if we weren't successful in our grant applications. What we do know is our museum staff are fantastically talented and successful in getting grants approved, but obviously we can't guarantee that. And so that's obviously something that we will look at. Also, alongside potentially some additional perhaps some marketing support for the town hall. I think what's really is encouraging to see lots of different new events going on in the town hall in Hitchin, and I think is hugely important to help improve our income streams and so on. And it may well be some additional sort of marketing and other organisational support there to obviously encourage even more events there. It's a fantastic facility. We want to see it really used all the time, and by lots of different events. So it's another area we'll look to do some further work on. What I'm looking to do, Chair, is to be able, I think, as much as possible, to come to our next cabinet meeting with a fully developed and finalised proposition against not just the things that are in our sort of investment proposals already that's in the paper, but the things that I've touched on here, so that we have a fully developed proposition to come and for approval at cabinet, and then obviously to approve to come to a full council. I know in the past, and it maybe we still have to do that. I've ended up coming in, and obviously other colleagues in other groups have come in with lots of last minute amendments, but I want us as an administration to try and avoid doing that as much as possible. So we've got these things out on the table as to saying these are the things we want to do as an administration. These are things that we think are our priorities, whether it's the Royston Learner Pool, or it's around the sort of museum or the North Herts Leisure Centre and so whatever else, things to support our district broadly, and we can set out our stall as an administration. So there's kind of some further work I think we want to do in coming over the next sort of few weeks. So when we come to cabinet, Chair, we've got that really developed, sort of finally developed and hopefully near finalised proposition for your approval. So lots of stuff in there, but I think what's really important, I think, is how we this budget actually sits alongside things we've talked about earlier, the council plan, the council delivery plan, and so on, actually to manage the priorities that we've got as an administration, and I think hopefully that to gain the support of colleagues in other groups in terms of that, because I think lots of the things I mentioned here are not particularly party political. I think they're just important, and hopefully that will gain the support from cross party and across all of our residents as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Elwood. Can I just say that Councillor Allen will not be joining us. It's really exciting, isn't it? Questions?
Observations, really. Really exciting, and it sounds even better. Just reeled off one after the other rather than us going through it line by line. It sounds great. Very, very, very pleased about the Royston Learner Pool as the exec last year for leisure. I lobbied for it to be kept on the budget, and now it's a likelihood of it becoming a reality is great. But the whole thing sounds really exciting, and something we could be proud of.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Again, no questions, just observations. Again, I really welcome this investment programme that Councillor Albert has outlined, particularly the Royston Learner Pool, which I think does have real community and public health benefits. Also the digital signage for car parks in Hitchin, which is close to my heart as the exec member for Place, which hopefully could help to alleviate some of the parking problems in Hitchin. And I do agree with him that freezing council tax is not the way forward. But I think we do need to bear in mind that there could be political pressure for this from other parties. So I think that's why it is so important that we do have a viable investment programme that brings real intrinsic benefits to areas across the whole district.
Yes, I mean, my question is, how are we going to spread the message?
Well, I think first of all, I think it's probably worth saying just at this point, which I haven't necessarily touched on in detail. I think there's some really important things in the investment proposals that we already have on the table, which are in the paper. And particularly, obviously, Councillor Thomas has been leading around the economic development work. And I think there's things that we're doing in relation to place and planning and so on, and resources in there in relation to that. So I think there's lots of really important things already in the in the papers. Obviously, we need to finally and fully develop all these sort of proposals, particularly some of these additional ones, obviously with the support of Mr. Roach, Mr. Cooper, and officers and so on. So we come to a final position, in relation to all of these things, and see. Obviously, as I mentioned within the report, Chair, there's we often make sure part of it is that there is a capacity to be able to do all these things. We can have all these great ideas, and we can, have all these things and put aside some money for it, but we've got to have a capacity to live, because we know that officers are under pressure and there's a lot of work going on already, LGL, whatever, just their day job, a lot of work. So we absolutely understand that. But yes, we should when we get to cabinet and to full council, we should actually say, kind of loudly and proudly that this is what we are able to do as an administration, having managed with support of Mr. Cooper and his team, budgets prudently over a number of years, and this leaves us in a position where now, with a good financial settlement that we've had, with the other factors that came alongside it as well, like in sort of pensions and so on, that we are able to actually deliver some additional investments prudently and with value for money, and not at the risk of, this isn't just a spend. This is actually looking to these are value for money investments that will benefit our community, both socially and otherwise, and we should be loud and proud about it at the appropriate moment. But clearly we need to do the final further work and then deliver those final proposals when we come to cabinet and obviously to full council in February.
Thank you. Any other questions? Right, so the recommendations that Cabinet note the Council's expected funding for 26-27, confirms in line with the medium-term financial strategy that budget forecasts should be based on increasing council tax by 2.99%, the maximum amount allowable without a local referendum, noting that government have assumed council tax will increase by the maximum allowed in calculating core spending power. Agree which proposals, revenue and capital should be taken forward as part of the budget setting process for 26-27. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Albert, and a seconder, Councillor Williams. Debate? Yes, Councillor Albert.
And in doing that, I mean, I'm still working here on the assumption that that obviously cabinet colleagues here that agree with the proposals that are set out in the paper, but clearly obviously also set out that we do the further work on the proposals I've set out verbally this evening as well, and then obviously we can then come to a final decision upon them when we come to our next meeting and so on. But yeah.
Got nods there? I think we've got nods from all your colleagues. Shall we then go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Right, thank you very much. That's our last item. So I close this meeting at 9:41. Thank you very much.